ये तो नीचे ही है ना.
All right. Has everybody in class muted their audios? Okay, perfect. Good morning, everyone. I hope everybody's keeping well. I hope you all had a good weekend. So how did your weekend go? Joyful. Okay. Good morning, Sriraj. Good morning, Pooja. So nice to see that you guys also had a good weekend. So does anybody remember what we did in the last class, or did anybody read through the notes? Anybody has any questions with regards to what we did last class? Are we all good? Very good. Okay. All right. So for today's class, we'll be starting with the second chapter. So just let me quickly share my screen. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, I hope everybody's able to see my screen. Okay, I hope this screen is clear. Right. So for today's class, we're going to start with understanding human needs. And we did slightly touch upon this topic the last class before we began. So just a quick recap. Does anybody remember what we've touched upon when we were discussing about human needs? Okay, I'll actually need people to start talking. Otherwise, it'll be a little hard to understand where everybody's at. Okay, so what do you think human needs are? Love, okay. Food, shelter, clothing, all right. What else do you think human needs are? Quickly, it's early in the morning, let's get some quick answers.
Acceptance and belonging.
Sense of belonging, correct. Relationship, correct. What else do you think does a human need? There are many things that we actually need, right? So when we're looking at understanding a human and why do we have so many different kinds of human needs is because apart from just being spiritual beings, we're also physical beings, right? And as physical bodies and physical beings, we also require physical needs, which some of our classmates have already told us. We need food, clothing, water, shelter, a place to live in, right? Those are the very basic needs. And apart from that, we have higher needs like a sense of belonging, love, relationship, a sense of being wanted, right? And when all of these things are met, that's when we would mostly feel that need, right? So just to begin with a quick example, I know I gave this example in the last class as well. Just a recap on that so that we all get the context of what we're talking about. So sometimes when our phones and our gadgets stop working, where do we normally take the phone? We'll take it to a person who fixes it, all of those service centers and things like that, right? Even for something as small as a watch, if your watch stops working or if your strap is too big or your strap is broken, we take it back to the watchmaker, right? And it's usually this person who would then fix your watch. We will not try to meddle with it because we know that once we do it, we will have no idea. We might just make it even worse, right? And in order for us to understand properly what do we need as a human, we see that we need to know who our creator is, right? In the same way how when machines get broken, we take them back to the mechanic because the mechanic knows exactly how to fix something that's broken. So even for us as humans, we need to understand who is our creator. And our creator is God. So knowing that God, if God is our creator, he can fix his creation, right? So when you look at your notes, the first paragraph says that scripture shows people to be made in the likeness of God and to be image bearers of God, right? So if we are made in the image of God, we are reflecting his characters, his values, his virtues, and we carry our life, right? So if man is made in the image of God, understanding God helps us understand how we need to function and all the different needs that we have, right? So let's look at the different characteristics or the nature of God, right? So we see that God is eternal, he's powerful, he's perfect, and he's personal, right? Which means he has a will, intellect, and emotions, right? So we see that all of these different characteristics of God are things that we will ultimately reflect in ourselves when we're going through it, right? And how do we understand God and his nature? We understand God and his nature by running through the Bible all the way from Genesis to Revelations, right? From the very beginning, we already see that he's a very relational God, right? That is one of the main things that, right? God is a relationship with us, and that's why we also have the need to desire a relationship with other people. So when we're looking at the different characteristics of God, what do you think God's nature is? What kind of a God is he? He's a loving
God
God.
of love.
God is
God is love, like God of love. He love
God.
everybody.
All right. Anything else? What do you think are the different characteristics of God? He's just, kind, merciful. He's holy. He's omnipotent, omniscient, but I don't think we can do that. We can't be omnipotent and omniscient as God is. But like everybody said, God is love, God is kind, he's just, he's holy, which means if our creator is that way, his creations also should be walking along those same lines, right? So when we're looking at where do we get our image of of God, we see that through understanding scripture, we see the different characteristics of God, right? We see that from the very beginning, God has been always so relational from Adam all the way to his creation, even after the fall, with the coming of Jesus and up until now. He's always been a God of having very intimate personal relationships with everybody else, right? So understanding those different characteristics of God, we can try to understand ourselves a little more. Now, when we look at why is it important for us to understand the nature of God, is we need to understand what happened before the fall and what happened after the fall, right? So when we look at things before the fall, we see that everything was perfect, right? We were perfectly loved, perfectly valued, we had a meaning and purpose, right? Why do some of the needs come up now? It was because after the fall, when sin has crept in, there's so many things that we were supposed to get freely did not come in anymore, right? But of course, now with Jesus and the work of the cross, all of these things are met through God, right? But we need to understand that that shift in the needs happened because of the fall for us, right? So when you look at why we need to understand man, like it's written in your notes, to repair something, we need to understand how things are made. And the greater the understanding, the easier it'll be with us to work with God as he helps to restore us and in and around us, right? So firstly, we need to understand that people are free moral agents. That means we have the right to make a choice. So when we are in a counseling room, right, and we're talking to different people, we need to understand that they will always have the right to choose and the right to do what they would want. We will just be able to show them the different perspectives, right? Like when in your discussions, through your talks with them, we might be able to show them, okay, these could be the different options that you have, right? And some options would be better than the other, some may not be so good, right? But at the end of the day, we need to remember that people are free moral agents. We can't do anything to control what they would want to do and how they would want to do it also, right? Next is we see that man is an eternal being, which means that every man has eternity placed in his heart, right? So I think that is something that we all understand, and also that God has given man the right to choose his own eternal destiny. Even though for some of us, we may know that there might be people who don't know God, and we might try to do our best to help them get to know God, right? But God, being who He is, He'll still give you the choice. He will not push you into doing something that you do not want to do. So we always try the best that we can to make people understand where our eternal destinies lies, because we're only here on earth just for a moment, right? We're not to understand that it is not a choice that we can just push on people, right? They finally make those choices at the end. So what does it mean to be created in the likeness of God, right? So when we're looking at the different characteristics and the likeness of God, from there we're able to see 5 different areas of human functioning. So we have the spiritual being, rational being, emotional being, a volition being, and a physical being. So we'll just quickly run through these different types of human functioning. This will also be related to things on page 12, right? Page 12 also has a few of the details that's written about this, but we will just run through page 10 on your notes first, right? So spiritual being, what does it mean to be a spiritual being? So as God is spirit, we are also, since we're created in the image of God, we also have our spirit, right? And most of us, for the majority of us who know God, that yearning to come to know God is always there, right? Because if God is spirit and we also have a spirit, our spirit will yearn to be closer to the Creator and to be closer to the likeness of God, right? That is our basic functioning as spirit beings, right? Now, as ability to reason, understand, and comprehend. Now, when we look at the ability to reason, understand, and to comprehend, we see that we have our own thinking capacity. And through this thinking capacity that we have, we will try to make a decision on what is good for us, what is bad for us, what we have to do, even as simple as when you're hungry and you want to eat. You are the one who's deciding what to eat, right? And sometimes when we're going through certain feelings and emotions, sometimes when we are angry, if you take the time to think, you're starting to reason, like why am I angry? What could have been the cause? Was it my friend not talking to me? Or did I not eat food all morning? That's why now I'm angry, because all I want is just food, right? So we see that even to the tiniest of things, the man's brain is constantly reasoning, trying to understand and to comprehend things. In the same way, like now you're sitting in class and you're trying to listen and comprehend to what I'm saying, it still falls along the same line. Of course, the way you're thinking and comprehending what I'm speaking now is of a higher level, right? There are a few things where you may not even have to think, right? But the brain is constantly working around these 3 to the emotional being of man. So we see that our emotions tend to play a major part in how we see and how we understand our lives, right? Sometimes we experience so many different kinds of emotions, the entire spectrum of emotions, right? The heaviest of emotions and the happiest of emotions. But sometimes what we feel is that whenever we go through those very heavy emotions, like we're angry, we're irritated, we're like, okay, I can't be angry too much, or I can't be negative all the time, right? But we also need to remember that emotions help us signal when things go wrong, right? If you see the last word, signal emotions, right? These are emotions that tend to help us understand if something has gone wrong in ourselves, or if things in our environment is not really suiting for us, right? Sometimes if we are angry, it's okay to feel angry, all right? I know some of us may feel like, what is she saying? But it's actually okay to feel angry. Why? Because then it sends a signal to our brain that something is wrong, right? Normally, somebody done something wrong to us, if we see things in around us that are not right, right? So if we know that we are getting moved by these things that are not okay, then we will start to think, rationalize, understand, comprehend. And the moment we do that, we'll be able to make a choice, right? So not necessarily that all emotions that we're going through are as a signal point in order for us to understand what we're going through, and these emotions help us decide. Are you able to understand so far? Okay. Now we look at humans being volition beings. Volition beings simply meaning the will to choose, a direction to choose, right? we all have free will, and through this free will, we decide so many things, right? It could be as simple as deciding what clothes you'd want to wear today, what earrings after college, right? What you want to eat, what you want to drink, right? These are the small basic things of free will. Now, free will also comes to the bigger elements of things, right? Which career you want to do, where you want to live, who you want to get married to, start a family with, right? So, all the way from the smallest of things to the biggest of things, man has a free will to choose, right? And the Bible has also made it very clear that we are also responsible for the things that we do, right? And the things that we choose and we decide. That with every choice that we make, it comes with its own consequences and its own actions, be it good or bad, right? So if you choose something that is good, you'll ultimately get the good consequence of things. But when you decide to move along the wrong path, the wrong consequences tend to come, right? So that solely depends on us. We can't really tell that, oh, I was forced to do it because of somebody else, right? It's very clear that certain decisions, and most of the decisions we make it, of course, there will be things in the environment that might tell you or help you decide what to do. But at the end of the day, when we are making a choice, it solely falls on us. Okay? So the next thing is physical beings. Of course, we know that God does not have a body. Maybe if we imagine who God is, we can see him as a man, maybe sitting on a throne, can't really see his face, but bright lights, maybe white robes, right? But those are just our imaginations. Nobody has actually ever seen God, right? They've just felt his presence. So even though he's a spirit being, we know that when he created us into physical bodies, right? So if we have physical bodies, we will naturally have physical needs. But God, being the gracious and the kind, loving God that he is, he has already made provisions for us for our physical needs as well, right? So when we look at the different kinds of needs that we have as humans, we have three main needs, right? We have casual needs, critical needs, and crucial needs. So what do you think? So we've been talking about needs, like from the very beginning, the chapter also says needs, right? So what do you think is a need? What is a need? What do you think a need is? Try to think. What do you think is a need? What do you think is a need? What is a need?
To have something.
To have something, okay? What else do
Ne-
you think?
Need is like water that we need to drink when we are thirsty. So it's a need.
Okay, all right. Anybody else? We'll take one more answer before I move forward. It's something that we need to survive to keep us alive, right? Correct. So if we look at all of these three answers, everybody was moving around the same direction, right? So a need is something that causes you to do something, right? So for example, if you feel the need for water, that need pushes you to, it motivates you to do something, which ultimately becomes the behavior to get your goal. For example, if you're thirsty, your thirst becomes the need, right? So what is your motivation? It's the desire to behavior. You get up, you go get a glass of water, and the goal, you're not thirsty anymore, right? So a need will motivate you to do something which will then affect your behavior and get you to the goal. All right, I'll just repeat that one more time. The need will lead to a motivation, which then directs you to a behavior to achieve your goal. Okay, so these are the four things. So need, motivation, behavior, and goal, right? So when we're looking at all of these four things, we see that there are three kinds of needs, right? One is the casual need, that maybe you just want a dessert, or you'd want to have Maggie after a cold day, or some nice chai, or some tea, or coffee when you're too tired, or It's a bright, beautiful sunlight day, a lot of sunshine, especially after long, cold, dark winters. You just want to go be there in the sun. It's not that if you don't get the sun, you'll fall sick or something, but it's just a need, right? You just want to go out and be in the sun for a while. So those things which do not weigh too heavy, where it's okay whether you get them or you don't, they fall under casual needs, right? Now, critical needs are the needs that will affect your quality of life, right? So when you look at critical needs, they're the ones met with relate spouse, your children, your friends, and the desire of having a relationship. Now, if you remember, one of your classmates mentioned this at the beginning, right? What are the main needs? He said that relationships are one of the main things that we need. So we know that whether we like it or not, relationships tend to be one of the main problems that we all have, right? It could be with a friend or your family or your sibling, or you're talking to somebody, things go wrong, it kind of messes your entire day, right? So relationships tend to be one of the main needs that we have as human beings, right? Now, crucial needs are the most basic and the profound longings of the heart, right? And in order to understand what are these three crucial needs that we have, it's the paragraph under that. So the three crucial needs, the core needs of every human being, is the sense of security, the sense of self-worth, and the sense of significance, right? Now, why are these three things very important? We're going to look into that, right? Now, we all want that sense of security, right? When we're around people, we hate being alone. We would like to belong somewhere, right? The moment you have that one close friend, or you have 2-3 people around you that you know that if you're around them, I don't have to act, I know that they'll accept me for who I am, right? You get that sense of security, that I belong here. These people need me, I need them, right? Now, when we're looking at statement, I am not what I think I am not what you think I am what I think you think I am. Just reread that statement again, see if it makes sense, okay? I am not what I think I am not what you think I am what I think you think I am. Makes sense? Do you understand it? Right? So it looks like a very confusing statement, right? But if you think about it, how many times do we actually function in that last statement? I am what I think you think I am. So mostly when we're outside, when we're around people, right? If people have considered you to be like, oh, if I go to her, she'll actually be able to get it done. So people are already saying that about you. So it'll be like, okay, let me do that. Let me try to fit in that form to see that I will be able to do what I have to do, what they think I can do, right? And the only person who'll actually know who you are, it's you, right? When you're alone by yourself in your room, maybe there were, right? So now sometimes that brings a big question mark, right? Like, so now who exactly are we? If we are trying to function based on what other people think that we are, sometimes we may try to compromise, we'll try to push things around just to fit a certain mold, right? So where does our worth lie, right? So now the most important thing to understand is that when so many demands and so many things come around from the world, we need to understand that our identity and our self-worth comes from God, right? Because we may want to fit the mold of so many things that people might put in us, we may start losing ourselves. And I think some of us may have gone through that at some point, right? When we're constantly trying to fit in, constantly trying to push around and do so many things just to feel belonged and wanted, we may lose our sense of self, right? And that becomes a very difficult feeling sometimes to go through, because then you don't know who you are. It becomes a big question mark, right? But around us are questioning our worth, we need to understand where our worth comes from, right? And our worth comes from God, right? Now, when we look at significance, this is the sense of meaning and purpose that we have for our lives, right? So things like security, right, and self-worth, all of these things, it comes all the way from the very beginning, right? If we've grown up with a sense of security from the time we were little, right? Most of us have grown up in a safe environment with parents, with people around us that supported us, gave us the food that we need. Hence, when we grow up, we get those little things like, yes, I'm feeling safe and secure, right? From the time you were a child all the way to now. Since most of you are sitting here, you have good clothes, good food, a roof over your head. So the basic sense of security is met, right? But for some people, like the kids on the streets, right? The ones who don't have a place to live, who may not even get one meal a day, the most basic sense of security is not there, right? So if the most basic things and our needs are not met, it becomes really hard to feel like, okay, am I even worth it sometimes? I'm struggling to even get a plate of food, right? So now, when we look at why these three things are very important, I'll give you an example to understand why, right? Suppose, for example, we don't feel loved. We don't feel loved from people in and around us. That's not there in your notes, okay? It's just an example that I'm giving you. I'm still talking about the three needs. So when we are looking for love and we don't find love, what do? We might look it for some places where it's not good, right? Suppose we can't find at home and you're not getting it from the people who are closest around you. Very natural for us to go looking for it because these are the needs that we need, right? And if we're looking for it in places that it's not right for us, it might lead a very bad path, right? For so many people, especially who've gone towards substances, who've gone towards drugs, why do they go there, right? They just needed something to understand what they're going through at some point, right? But because they're not getting the relief that they need from the people in and around them, okay, let's move to the next best thing. What can bring me that relief, right? So you move towards other things. For example, you don't get love. Maybe you start looking for love in the wrong places. Then you get mixed up with the wrong people. And who knows where that might lead you. It might lead you to getting with bad company. They may put you into wrong things. And so many other things come out from understanding our crucial needs, right? But when we look at us and we understand who Jesus is and who God is, do you think that we can get all of these three needs from Jesus? We can, right? Why? Because in Jesus and in God, we know that we're unconditionally loved no matter what, right? We belong to God. No matter who we are, what we've done, we belong to Jesus, right? So we know for a fact that no matter what happens, our sense of security as people comes from God because God loves me, God knows me, God understands me. That's it, right? And when we're looking at self-worth as the sense of value, God says that we're more precious than diamonds and rubies, right? In the eyes of God, we're so precious that He made us last also as one of the beings, right? Other things came out really quickly. But then for us, God actually took time to think through. And if you look at the different things that God has created, God spoke to man so much, right? If you compare with the different beings, like God created them, He's like, okay, you move on. We hardly see God talking to animals. No, we don't see it's written in the Bible. He's talking to birds, He's talking to things. Maybe He does, right? But then the way He communes with man, very intimate, very personal, right? So we're worthy to God. We're so worthy, right? So we need to understand that our self-worth also comes from God. And our significance. We understand that we are significant to God because why? In the eyes of God, our lives has meaning and purpose, right? God has a very specific purpose into all of our lives. There's a pre-direction that He's already heading you to. Of course, there'll be days when we're confused. We may not be sure, okay, God, where am I heading to next? I'm not sure if I'm making the right direction. But then knowing that God is the one who's authoring your life, you already have a purpose, right? Sometimes we may not know exactly what it is initially, but we know for a fact that we will get to where we're supposed to be, right? Now, if you look at the next part of your notes, you look at the different, again, the different aspects that we have as humans. But again, this is just something that it's repeat from the 10th page. We'll just quickly run through this also just to see what are the different things, right? because these are also equally important. So now when you look at as a counselor, right, why is it important for us to understand all of these 5 things that we have? We'll go into each of these points in detail. So the first one is the physical being and the physical aspect of a person. So do you remember when we were looking at the first chapter, we were talking about how it's important to also understand the works of different subjects when it comes to understanding a human person, right? So long as we understand the spiritual being, that's good. We also need to understand their physical aspects, the social aspects, cultural aspects, right? Why? Because sometimes the physical problems that we may go through sometimes are actually purely physical. For example, you're having a stomach ache. Maybe you had nothing the entire day. At night, you just had chips and you slept. Obviously, next day morning, your stomach, if it wasn't the good kind of chips, your stomach is going to hurt. Now, you can't blame that on sin. It's something that you did not eat the entire day, right? So you have to treat that. Eat good food, drink enough water, flush that out of your system, and eat good food, right? Now, for example, something like even depression. Right now, depression is a term that is given to people who have felt sad for a very long time, not knowing why, right? Sometimes depression can be caused because of a physical situation. Sometimes when we lose people, you lose a job, you actually feel really sad and you get into that period of long sadness, right? Depression can also come because of that. So it doesn't mean that that's a sin, right? That is actually something that's very natural. Like you've gone through something that was hard, right? If you look at even in the cases of Job and David, if you look at Psalms, there are certain spaces where chapter after chapter, David is feeling like really low, right? Now, if we very practical perspective, we can say that he actually went through maybe a period of depression. But then it doesn't mean that God didn't help him then. God helped him, but there was also a natural aspect to why he felt a certain way, right? Sometimes it can also come because of something that's wrong in your brain, right? So we know that our brain is made up of a lot of chemicals, neurons, transmitters, so many signals running to and forth, right? In cases, it's bound for the brain to not feel okay. It's like any other organ, right? So we see that there's so many different aspects that comes together. It's not just the physical part of it, right? I mean, spiritual part. So it's important to see that all of these things come together. So understanding the functioning of a physical body is really important. For example, even when we look at women, for example, because we go through the entire cycle of the menstrual cycle, right? We know that different weeks will experience different things. So we can't just let that go because that's something physical. We need to understand those things as well, right? So that's one. Second is we are emotional beings. So emotions tend to decide how we move around things. Okay, so let's start with the question. How are we all feeling today emotionally? Are we feeling happy? Are we calm? Are we feeling it's okay? We're just here today. Is somebody feeling sad? Is somebody feeling a little low? Where are we at with our emotions today? Right? So for some of us, you can feel like pretty normal, like nothing. Like I feel like things are okay. For some of us, if maybe you're thinking, if you have a plan towards the end of the day today, all you're thinking about is your plan. So you might actually be excited the whole day, like, okay, I'll just wait for this day to get over. I have a plan to get to, right? Especially if you've planned for a movie or something, the excitement is real, right? But what if most of us, if sometimes if you get up in the morning, you get a news that you don't really like, kind of messes up with your entire day, right? So we need to understand that our emotions also play a major part in our lives, whether we like it or not, right? And a counselor who does not pay attention to the emotional area might just start then looking at a person's body as something that's just mechanical and physical, right? But it's very important to not neglect that part because why? So many things come from it, right? And we see that our heart also carries a lot of things. Proverbs 4:23 says, guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life, right? It could mean even to the tiniest of things, right? But we know that emotional areas. Now, man being a rational being means what? The man is thinking. Thinking, if you look at psychology, looks at the cognitive part of the brain. Now, what is cognition? Cognition is simply the way a man thinks, right? Now, how do you think spiritually our thinking can be affected? We think many things, right? But what do you think will affect our thinking spiritually? We all think good things, right? But sometimes our thoughts are not so great. Our thoughts actually pull us down so much. They'll make us feel unwanted, they'll make us feel unloved, they'll make us think that we are not capable, not good enough. So, how do you think that works spiritually? Who is the main enemy that we go on a daily battle with every day? We fight with ourselves, and who else? We have the enemy, right? And what does the enemy want to do to us? He wants to steal, kill, and destroy, right? Now, we understand that the enemy is not God who can actually look inside our brains and see what's happening, right? But what can the enemy do? He can start lying. He can start putting in seeds of doubt. Or what if like you're actually good at something, right? And he comes and he'll be like, are you sure you even put that wire in the right place? One thought. And when you're sitting, you're like, oh my God, is that wire right? Or if the wire is not right, what if it short circuits? And then a fire comes out. And so many things. Things can just keep going on and on and on. But what did he do? It was just one thought. Is the wire in the right place? Right? So we need to understand that as we also may think of many things, right, in the physical. Spiritually, we have the enemy who tries to come into our thinking to not allow us to think in the ways that are good for us, right? Because one bad thought can easily ruin your day. One bad thought will just send us down the spiral, right? But the more we train ourselves to learn how to deal with these thoughts, we can actually get through it, right? And that's where counselors come in, right? What do? We help people see what thoughts are being helpful to them, what is not helping them, and how can they learn to navigate all of these thoughts, right? Which of course we'll see further how we can help people do these things. Okay, so next is we are volition being. So what does volition mean again? We have free will, right? So we see that the free will that we have is also written in the Bible, right? The Bible says that we are all free willed individuals, right? So if you look at Joshua 24:15, it says, but if you refuse to serve the Lord, then gods your ancestors served beyond Euphrates, or will it be the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are now? But as for me and my family, we will serve the Lord. So if you look at the background about this, this is when they've already crossed to the promised land and many things are happening in and around that, right? If I'm correct. Okay, but we see that even they understand that God will not impose, right? And I think most of us here who are following Christ, we are following him because we want to. People did not put a gun into our heads and like, if you don't follow Christ, you're going down, right? We didn't do that. We're following him. And because we understand that we did it out of our own freedom, we understand that people can also experience this kind of freedom. So many things come along with it, right? So in the counseling context, how does this work, right? It works in a way where when you're sitting and talking with people, right? For example, if you're sitting and talking to your friend and you tell her, hey, I don't think you're supposed to do this. I think this is bad for you. And then she'll say, okay, yeah, that's fine. But then she does it anyway. You can't tell her, don't do it, right? You know that at the end of the day, they'll do what they want to do. Now, that is your friend. You might get angry, might get irritated, so many things will come, but you're just like, it's okay. Like, she's still my friend or he's still my friend, right? But in a counseling setup, we need to understand that we need to respect that other person's will regardless. We can't be in the middle to say that, you know what, I think you made a bad choice. We can't say that, right? Because at the end of the day, they will choose what they want to do. Because in the same way God gave us a free will to decide things, they'll also decide. We are not the ones who would be like, okay, I'll tell you what to do now, and you follow this, and you will be fine. We can't do that, right? Firstly, it's unethical, which means it's wrong. We can't do that for somebody else's life. Next is you're taking the responsibility to decide on their behalf, which is very wrong, right? We can't let that happen. Okay, so that's one. Next is we are all spiritual beings. So we see that apart from so many other things, we understand that we all carry a spirit, right? And sometimes the problems that we have are also spiritual, right? So there have been times when you meet people, you understand that maybe what they're going through, prayer is something that can help them, right? And how do we understand all of these things? We understand to what they're going through and the different things that they are, right? When people talk to you, you'll kind of understand, right? Whether it's something that they're going through emotionally, or whether it's a physical pain that they're going through, or something somewhere spiritual is not aligning, right? So when we see that, if as a counselor, you're focusing on all of these 5 areas, you will give them a very holistic way. That's a very holistic way of helping somebody, right? Because you're also looking at their spiritual, emotional, physical. You're also looking at mentally how they're thinking. It's very important for us to look at all of these things, because why? Once we ignore, then we might neglect something that's really important, right? What if you're trying to help somebody spiritually, right? And they're saying, I'm not able to sleep because I'm having so many thoughts in my head, and every time I go to sleep, like I dream really bad things. So now we know that sleep and good rest comes from God, right? So you know for a fact that if you join them in prayer and pray those words over them, it will also help them, right? But what if the fact is they're constantly on their phone for 3 hours before they sleep at night? So now, 2 things that we have to look at, right? This person can't sleep also because of bad dreams, and this person's behavior is also wrong. So now that's something physical, spiritual, working together. So that means we have to understand, why is this person on the phone always, right? Is there something that they're trying to avoid from, escape from, because they don't want to think about certain things, right? So do you get the point? It's a cluster of so many things coming in together. So before I move to the last part of this chapter, do any of you all have any doubts regarding to the needs or the crucial needs or any of the beings that we all are? Just take a few seconds to go through, see if you have any questions. Okay. The students online are all good. In-person classes? In-person classes. In-person students, we good? Okay. So now let's look at the 3 central convictions that help us understand a little more about our 5 areas of functioning. So one is people are made in the image of God, right? And with God, all of these 5 areas also work along with him. The second one is sin has broken and distorted that image. So what counseling does is working with God to restore that image, right? So for the same example that that maybe I've taken earlier, so if we take depression, right, sadness, we see that sometimes that sadness can come from so many things, right? And because of the worry that we have, we know that worry wasn't actually given by God. God has given us peace, right? Worry because of so many things, right? Maybe people in our family is not keeping well, or we're worried about our finances, we're worried about so many different things, right? So firstly, we know that we're made in the image of God. That means worry is not by God, right? So what happens? Sin comes in, which is why sometimes you may have that worry. So the next level is, as counselors, what we try to do is work alongside with God to help eliminate that worry, right? Very simple, very basic example, but you kind of get the point of how as counselors we work in power with God, right? Like how I have mentioned earlier, whenever you're in a room counseling somebody, it's always three people. There's you, there's God, and the person, right? So the more you learn how to partner with God, the easier it becomes to navigate through these things, right? So we see that when we look at the Bible also, the Bible looks at every different aspects of the person, right? We see that the Bible teaches us how to live physically, like good, healthy bodies, right? If you look at the Bible, there's so much food also that's it, right? There's dates, there's milk, there's bread, there's meat, there are vegetables, there's so many, especially if you move towards the Newer Testament, yeah? When you're looking at the chapters of Luke, John, Matthew, you see that they eat dates and figs and all of that all the time. And probably there were no cars back then, they were always walking around everywhere. So you know for a fact that maybe they could have been physically really fit, right? Because they were all always also working. Now, when we look at how do we think, the Bible teaches us how to think, right? To fill ourselves with good thoughts, right? You renew yourselves by the renewing of your mind, right? And fill our hearts with good thoughts, happy thoughts, right? Things that will fill you up from the Spirit, right? Now, when you're looking at spiritually, how do you feed yourself? Feed yourself with the Word, right? Because the Word, again, will give you strength. So throughout, from the very beginning all the way up to the end, if you read the Bible from the point of a counselor's perspective, you will see that it actually covers so many aspects already. We just have to learn how to apply that, right? So as we move in further towards the other chapters, just remember that these are the things that we need to remember as counselors, that humans, we have all of these 5 basic needs and the basic principles and the functioning, and we all simultaneously move together in these. And in order for us to be able to help them in the way that we can help them well, all of these things need to function simultaneously, right? And as we go further, I'm sure through exercises and things like that, we'll try to get a clearer understanding counseling setup as well. And with that, we come to the end of chapter 2, and we will be moving on into the next chapter, into the counseling relationship. Now, before I begin about this, about the counseling relationship, since we just have a few minutes before the first hour closes, what do you think, like just out of curiosity, right? Like you don't think of yourself as counselors or anything. What makes a good relationship? What do you think makes up for a good relationship? Conversations, okay. Trust and faith, okay. What else makes up for a good relationship?
Understanding the basic needs.
Understanding the basic needs, okay. So there are many things, right, that makes up a good relationship. A good relationship is based on trust, is based on understanding, is based on listening, right? If good behavior, very true. If both of the people in a conversation constantly talks, nobody's listening to anybody, right? So many of us, sometimes we just need somebody to listen to us, right? If that person's not listening to us, you're like, forget it. I'm not going to talk to them, right? So as we move on into the next class, we will pick up on the 3rd chapter. We'll start with the counseling relationship, and we bring into a close of the 2nd chapter. Please do take some time to just go through the needs, because I do understand that it can be a little complicated to understand the interlink of everything. So the students online, students in person, maybe not today, but when you go back home after today, if you are going to, but if you're going through that, if you have any questions, just make a note of it and we'll discuss it. Just remember, there are no dumb questions, there are no stupid questions. All questions are always good questions. And it's always these questions that we think are dumb and stupid, which are the best questions actually, right? These are the ones that will help everybody else. So I will see you again in the next hour. Thank you so much for joining in for the first hour, and I will see everybody soon again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. God bless you. Very powerful teaching and very helpful teaching. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. See you again for the next hour.